Well, Minister and regional chairs, mayors, other elected officials, ladies and gentlemen. Brian, could you do me a small favor? One time when I came out here a couple of years ago to see the mayor of Mississauga, I parked my car in a spot that our office indicated I should outside the north side of the city hall there. Went in and got a bit of an upbraiding from the mayor. I was the opposition leader at Queen's Park, and when I came out, my car got towed away. And if you could just go out to the parking lot and just keep an eye on my car while I'm here, I'd appreciate that. That's a true story. The mayor of Mississauga knows that. Very expensive ticket. I mean, I thought the upgrading was quite enough, but towing my car away, that was above. I am honored, and Brian brought me out of the podium quickly because I do have to go back and do my radio show for today, but I'm not here with that hat on. I'm here as the chair of Civic Action, which of course is a regional organization that speaks as best it can with the cooperation and assistance of a lot of people in this room to regional issues. And I want to talk a little bit today about the region and about this part of the region and really join the minister in commending you for some of the leadership that you're showing today. I think it is to your credit that you're gathered here at a very important time to the greater region and the province, discussing what we can do about challenges and opportunities that we do share in common. And I think this meeting is taking place against the backdrop of two pretty fundamental realities that we don't spend enough time discussing. The first concerns that most basic responsibilities, and I know it's going to come up today, that we have whether we're in government or business or labor or academia or in the non-profit sector, and that is the responsibility to create an environment within which we can build communities that are more prosperous and caring and sustainable and efficient than we found them. And I'm not sure often enough we focus on making sure that that's really the ultimate goal, that we have to do all of those things to make these communities better than we found them. And I started the list with prosperity quite deliberately because jobs and investment are at the root of it all. With a job comes one's ability to support a family and to be a contributing citizen who can in turn help to sustain a caring society consistent with our long-held Canadian values. Remember, for all the rhetoric about businesses and companies and their undoubted shortcomings, and that's coming from an ardent free enterpriser who would admit that business and enterprise do have their shortcomings, they lie at the root of the entire prosperous, caring community matrix, which means one of our most fundamental obligations is to attract those businesses, to nurture them, to retain them, and the jobs that go with them, as I will discuss later in my remarks. And suffice it to say for now, and I think we know this, but it's important to keep this in mind throughout the discussion the rest of the day, that capital and jobs, of course, are more mobile than ever today, so it's all hands on deck to attract and to retain jobs in this region as a whole, the GTA West, of course, being a crucial part of the region, as the minister indicated. And I hope that a meeting like this is also taken as an opportunity to remind ourselves of the need to address value for money issues in our governments and to do a much better job than has generally been the case, stewarding the taxpayers' money. I know the problem hasn't been as acute in this neck of the woods as perhaps it has been elsewhere, but better run, more efficient governments are also a key cornerstone to those prosperous and caring communities. I strongly believe that the easy come, easy go attitude to the taxpayers' money, on display in far too many places, far too often, has threatened confidence in our democratic institutions, and in turn has badly damaged our ability to move forward on issues like transportation funding. I think right now, if you look at the single biggest obstacle standing in the way of resolving with the public the issue of how to pay for transit, it's a fear they have that whatever the money is, wherever it comes from, however it's raised,
it's going to be pissed away
into the same black hole they've seen so well used
yes.
in recent years. You know as I do that fiascos like Orange and eHealth and gas plants and even smaller examples like Senate expense accounts and Toronto Transit Commission boondoggles impair our ability to gain public confidence in the need for new means of funding public transportation.
Here's where you should have strong applause.
And in the spirit of building those prosperous and caring communities, if we also have disabused ourselves of the notion that government can be all things to all people, I think that too is good. There are three reasons at least why that is true in 2013, and I think every single meeting like this should focus on these things because I think it would represent a departure from some of the past thinking that's led us to where we are. And that's not all bad, but we sure have some problems today. First of all, governments do some things well, but not everything. Secondly, we can no longer afford to have governments which are trying to be all things to all people if we ever could afford that. And thirdly, we need citizens to engage in the building of these communities, not just paid professionals, as competent as they may be. There is nothing that substitutes for people getting together in a room and deciding how they are going to build their communities and address some of the challenges those communities face, those human problems that we all encounter every day. So that's reality number one. The second reality which confronts us today, I think, is that virtually every challenge of substance faced in the Greater Toronto Region, including GTA West, is regional in scope, is regional in complexion, and is regional, I believe, in solution. Jobs and prosperity, for example. Most of the competition for investment nowadays comes from other city regions, not individual communities or countries. We don't have an economic development plan for this region when we should. I mean, the Minister talked about the need to attract investment and the difference in the economy today compared to 20 or 30 years ago. But if you ask yourself this question, in all honesty, do we have an economic development plan for the Greater Toronto Region? I think the honest answer has to be no, we don't. And we don't presently market this region on an integrated basis either, which I believe that we should. Won't we be stronger up against the London region, by that I mean London, England, or the Chicago region, if we combine Sheridan College with the U of T, with a downtown Toronto bank, with a Halton geographic location, and put all of those things together and say, that's the package we're going to take to people in countries other than Canada to attract them to come here. I well remember interviewing not long ago on the radio the founders of an Oakville-based business, and I couldn't remember when I was making these notes the name of the company, but some of you will know this business. They make prescription dispensing machines that actually allow you to go up and stand in front of the machine and get your prescription out of the machine. And I remember the founder telling me of the fact that they have downtown Toronto bankers, they have Waterloo grads they rely on for all the technology that has allowed these machines to be sold around the world. They have an Oakville location for their head office, and they have a GTA-wide employee base. I asked him to look at where their employees lived, and of course they lived all over the GTA. They happened to work in Oakville. And that to me is a GTA global success story, which happened to be based in Oakville. But it benefited the entire GTA region, west, east, north, south, every single part of it. So economic development and jobs are clearly a regional issue. Immigrant settlement. Whether newcomers to Canada settle in Malvern or Malton or Milton, the mismatch between skills and jobs, the challenge of completely integrated newcomers to Canada into every part of our society, which we have not done anywhere near as well as we might like to pretend. The need to offer support to those people, whether in the form of skills training or a language course or something they need to help themselves to integrate into our society completely. These are challenges, I would argue, that are faced in common across the region, and the sooner we begin to address them as such, I think the better job we will do helping those people to help grow our region and make it stronger and more prosperous and more caring. Transportation. Transportation. The Minister talked about this. The regional nature of this challenge is so obvious not to require any additional comment, but I'll talk about it a bit more later on. And finally, by way of example, housing and planning. As we see explosive growth in this region as a whole, including GTA West, how lucky are we compared to most other places in the world to be experiencing that growth in a very positive kind of way with the kinds of people that are coming here as a magnet from all over the world. But we need to do a lot more by way of collaboration and cooperation, in my view, in this shared area of concern. So I think we have two alternatives. We can either think and act like a region, and by that I mean the region of the entire GTA, including GTA West, or we can wait around for some self-anointed, self-appointed big thinkers somewhere else, and think Queen's Park when I'm talking about that, to do it for us. I don't think too many of you want some new level of regional government or some new series of regional authorities or governance imposed. And I think your concern about that is well placed, so the alternative is to find ways to collaborate and cooperate and coordinate, especially in the areas previously mentioned. Think about it for a moment. When we compete between and among ourselves, say in the GTA West communities, or with Toronto or York or Durham, and even when we succeed in shuffling jobs back and forth between and among those particular municipalities, what have we really achieved by way of a victory? What have we really achieved by way of a victory? When we spend time and money on multiple trade missions and in the process don't really put the whole region's best foot forward in terms of combining all that we have to offer and taking that case out to the world, does that make the most sense? On immigrant settlement, we already have a patchwork building program, which I'm convinced is not entirely effective. Why wouldn't we all work together to adopt best practices across the region? On housing and planning, look where the every municipality for itself has got us today. No bad intentions, no negligence, but the results simply didn't stand the test of time. And what did that get us? It got us the Smart Growth or Places to Grow program invented by people at Queen's Park. And while many of you may think it did the right things in the right way, you have to ask yourself whether you want those same people coming up with the next great plan for this region, or whether communities in the GTA West would be better off taking that leadership themselves. And finally, transportation. We've known in our heart of hearts for some time that commuters don't care about municipal boundaries or about municipal transit authorities. They just care about getting seamlessly, efficiently, and affordably to work or to play. And that's all they care about. Who owns the bus, or who runs it, or who pays for it. They care about the pay for it part to some extent, but they really just care about getting there. And so when it comes to transportation, and I believe that you actually have figured out the collaboration and the cooperation that we need to address this issue better than some other parts of the region. You've convened a meeting such as this. You've actually had meetings where resolutions have been passed spelling out the kinds of revenue tools that are acceptable and those that aren't to the GTA West municipalities. And that stands, I will say, in stark contrast to what you see going on elsewhere, including at the City Hall in Toronto, where there's been an excess of politicking and posturing for the last number of years. And I also take note of the fact that historically the leaders of the GTA West have demonstrated a willingness to be involved in regional affairs, whereas recent Toronto mayors have basically turned their back on regions as time has gone forward. And so I want to extend credit to all of your leaders, but I will say that led by the Hazel McKelly, who did have my car towed away, she has demonstrated particular leadership, and some others who sat at the tables that we had convened as Civic Action and shown a willingness to sit and talk, which I think leaves less opportunity for those hungry bureaucrats to invent solutions for GTA West or for the GTA as a whole. May I just conclude by saying something about two issues. Number one, transportation. There is no area right now at this point in time where it is more important for us to work together and to both put in place the transit plan, the transportation plan overall, that the people of this region have the right to expect and, in fact, that they need. But I think we have to make sure that we continue to work at finding broad agreement on how to pay for that transit. And I will say for the third time how constructive the leadership of this region, the GTA West, have been, the mayors and others, at actually sitting down and discussing this in an honest, courageous, and forthright way, and giving some input to the province when given the chance. What a responsible approach that has been. And I would, by the way, say it compares favorably to the responsible, honest, courageous approach undertaken by Premier Wynne. And you know, for me, as a past leader of the Progressive Conservative Party, to say that, I say it because I mean it. That she's demonstrated courage in addressing that issue, as have the people who are leaders in this area. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we've got to ask ourselves this question, and I said when I spoke to the Empire Club a couple of weeks ago, look at it through this lens. Take ourselves 25 years ahead from today and look back at 2013 and ask ourselves how we would want decisions made, what kind of decisions we would want, what are the right decisions to take for our children and for our grandchildren and for these communities to make sure that they're prosperous and caring going forward. And finally, economic development, the same thing. And by the way, speaking of honesty and courage, there is a pledge out there that Civic Action has that includes both leaders signing it and individual citizens, and I would encourage you to go out there before you leave today, and if we could get a whole bunch of leaders and citizens signing that pledge, it would be terrific. And finally, on economic development, I want to say the same thing. We need to collaborate on this. We need to put rivalries aside to the extent that we can and say what we're going to do is we're going to build this region. We're going to build it to be more prosperous. We're going to build it to be more caring, because that's really what we're here to do, is to look after each other in the way that Canadians do. And that we are going to do that because we believe that a rising tide lifts all boats. And so that when they win jobs in Brampton or Oakville or Mississauga or Caledon or anywhere else, that benefits the whole of the GTA. In conclusion, can I invite you today, when you have the opportunity to be here, to be bold, to be courageous, to look 25 years out, and ask yourself, what would we be doing today if we were doing it for our children and for our grandchildren? And that includes, I believe, reforming and reshaping governments themselves, because I think they have fallen decades behind in the way in which they spend and use our money and deliver services to people. It's not out of a conscious negligence, it's just out of, I think, sometimes a conclusion they can't afford to do certain things when in fact they can't afford not to do.
In some cases,
and to return to where I started, I think we should always, always, always remember our job. To take the single most blessed region, I believe, in the entire world. I don't think if you look at it, no matter what survey you're reading, that there's anywhere in the world that you could be better off to live but right here. And to take that blessing that we have and to apply our Canadian values, which place a premium on enterprise and on caring,
and make sure that we keep this region at least as good as it is, and preferably better. That's the test. That's the test, to keep it at least as good as it is, but preferably better. And it's a formidable test given the competition and fast-changing times that the Minister referred to, but I think it's a test we can pass with flying colours if we put our minds to it. It's not going to happen by accident, but if we cooperate, if we collaborate, if we show honesty and courage, and if we have the leadership worthy of the region in which we live and worthy of the people that we live here, I'm absolutely confident that we can do it, and I know that's the work that you're embarking on for the remainder of the day today. Thank you very much for your attention.